Previously on Higurashi When They Cry console arcs.
で、お電話でお話しした件ですが。
ああ、そんだな。これがその資料だべ。
As he said that, Honjo spread the document open on the opposite side of the table, with a serious expression completely lacking the earlier jovial atmosphere. There was a detailed report from the scene of the incident, and a photo of the scene was clipped to the side.
ひどい状態ですね。
8階の窓からの転落だったから、顔はぐちゃぐちゃになってて、親に身元を確認したんは、普段から着てたパジャマと肩口の黒子。とでも顔は見せられんかった。
Tomoe glanced at the picture, then quickly flipped it over. It was painfully difficult to bear.
確かに、親御さんには見せられないな。
これってやっぱり、レイナの言ってたお社様のたたりなんですか？
え？
だっておかしいじゃないですか。みんなの言う通り、浩平君は時々変な夢を見てうなされることもありました。だけど、私との約束を忘れて飛び降りて死にたくなるほど悩んでいたなんて、とても考えられない。
Seeing the desperately sorrowful color of her eyes, painfully squeezed at Tomoe's chest.
レイナに関わったせいでこんなことになって、なのにあの子は謝りもせずにいなくなった。みんなあの子が
だけど沢村くんは竜宮さんの紹介であなたと交際するようになったのよね。それなのにそんな優しい子がどうして彼を傷つけようなんて考えたのかしら。
そんなこと知らない。知るわけない。
落ち着いて尾崎さん。浩平くんを殺した犯人を捕まえるためには大事なことなの。よく考えてみて。
じゃあ
事故って可能性ももちろんない。そもそも窓から転落するような行動をする理由がないし、最後に会った看護師も検温時に異常を認めていない。
So no fever, so that is a symptom of Hinamizawa syndrome going haywire within a person's body, so I guess we can rule him out as being a victim of that.
間違いなくこれは殺人事件よ。
Starting to look that way to me, yeah. Then, Tomoe stood up straight and glanced at her watch. She still had a little more time before the express train arrived.
尾崎さん、あなたには辛いことかもしれないけど、真実を突き止めるために協力してほしいの。この後、時間少しだけいい？約束する。必ず犯人を捕まえてみせるから。ね。
なてめえんなろう。つったがおら。うら。やってんじゃ。おお。なってってだろ。あんじゃすってねえぞ。なんだてめえ。やんのか？
あのさ、言い忘れてたんだけど、私には NG ワードがあってね。一つはガキ。年下に見られるのはいいんだけど、ガキだって言われると最高に頭にくるのよね。これでも結構童顔だってのを気にしてるのにさ。
てめ
え。もう一つは男。これはさっきのやつよりも強烈にもう問答無用って感じに許せない。どこをどう見たら男だ？胸か？身長か？やかましい、どっちも大きなお世話だ。だから私の人生でそれを口にしたやつはみんな西方10万億度に片道切符で送ってやるって決まりなんだよ。
Police brutality! Police brutality! Hell yeah!
普通に脅してりゃもう少し穏やかに諭してやったのにね。 じゃあ最後の質問。
What was that noise, buddy?
君たち生命保険入ってるかな？オラオラオラオラオラオラオラオラオラ。
Was that a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure reference I just heard? Girl.
家って近いの？もし怖かったら途中まで一緒に付き合うけど。
いえ、大丈夫です。本当にすみませんでした。
あ、ちょっと。
The girl began walking away with her head down, but Tomoe suddenly called out to her. Then she thought about asking the girl just for her name, but stopped herself. Nobody really enjoys giving their name to the police. So instead,
私、ミナイって言います。南北の南に井戸の井。あ、もし何か困ったことがあったら遠慮なく相談してね。できる限り力になるから。
her face was backlit, so Tomoe couldn't make out her expression very well. But the girl bowed her head once more and then quickly left the area. Even after she went out of view, Tomoe stopped and stood there for a while.
それで、その男の子の彼女さんは何と言っていました？
もし自殺でないのなら、殺したのはリュウグウレイナじゃないかと。彼女が呪い殺したか、それとも直接やってきて殺したか。まあ、両方とも可能性はゼロに近いですけどね。
If it's the latter, there was no way she could have avoided being seen at the hospital. And more importantly, Reina Ryuugu didn't seem to have a reason to kill him in the first place. And the former was utter nonsense. If it was possible to kill someone with a curse, there would be no way to catch evildoers. With that in mind, Tomoe wasn't just skeptical of supernatural phenomena, but outright denied it.
お社様のたたりね。以前お伺いした時から少々気になっていたんですが、確かに本人が知りもしないのにそのことを口にして挙句の果てに飛び降りた。ただの自殺や事故にしては妙な感じですね。
県警の捜査一課長は殺人の線で見ているそうで、私も同意見です。本来なら一見捜査に当たるのですが、面識のあった子なので、せめて分かる範囲だけでも知っておきたいと思いまして。大石さん？
Tomoe couldn't help but tilt her head and stare when she noticed Ooshi's oddly mysterious expression. He thought silently for a while, carefully choosing his words, before finally addressing Tomoe.
ともえちゃん、たたりで人が死ぬって話、ここじゃちっともバカバカしくなんかないんですよ。数ヶ月前にも人が確かに死んでいます。
え？
People dying from a curse. It's not just some old tale, but something still happening today. Although honestly, Tomoe was even more dubious than surprised. However, Ooshi wasn't one to tell ghost stories or joke around, intending to scare someone, and he began talking in a matter-of-fact tone. Drive someone to murder. So, was the previous incident between Reina Ryuugu and her classmates instigated by someone else's will? In a manner of speaking. If so, what on earth is the connection? Why would Reina Ryuugu commit an act of violence in a town that had nothing to do with Hinamizawa?
正直、わからないことだらけで頭が痛くなります。
まったくですな。何にせよ、リュウグウレイナには確かに謎があると言ってもいいのかもしれません。調べてみて損はないかと。
ですね。すみませんが、大石さん、沢村康平死亡時のリュウグウレイナのアリバイを念のために調べていただけますでしょうか。
わかりました。それで、ともえちゃんは？
一度、リュウグウレイナがどんな子か、この目で見てみたいです。本当に私が聞いたイメージ通りの子なのか。
Tomoe rested her chin on her hand after saying that. Reina Ryuugu and Hinamizawa village. She wanted to uncover whatever the connection was between the two of them. And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. So, now that Minai is once again familiar with the backstory of Hinamizawa village and how the Watanagashi festival may have a connection to Kuhei's mysterious death, which at this point we suspect is a murder, it looks like we're now going to be pursuing our next best lead into this case, which will be the person who assaulted Kuhei. That being Reina Ryuugu herself. So I would imagine that today we're going to be paying her a visit in Hinamizawa at some point. And I'm quite curious to see how this whole thing will play out. So let's jump right into it, shall we? Ah, we're already here. We're just gonna jump right to it, huh? The surrounding area was full of natural atmosphere. The golden ears of rice fluttered in the wind along the sprawling sea of a pastoral land. The lusciously verdant, freshly grown crops in the field were some sort of fruit? Vegetables? The wind blowing through the open windows carried in a distinct aroma, different from the summer grass. A fresh, calming air that you could just melt into. Then, just beyond the fields and old-fashioned houses, there were several newly built houses lined up at irregular intervals.
のどかな雰囲気の村ですね。心が洗われます。
私も決して嫌いじゃありませんよ。事件さえなければね。
She lightly tilted her head to steal a quick glance at Ooshi, who was driving. He seemed to have something on his mind as he stared straight at the road ahead. The frame of the car shook as it hit a bump on the gravel road. The suspension seemed pretty worn out. The impact propagated straight to her seat, causing her to jump up.
年季入ってますね。大石さんは平気なんですか？
長年の愛車ですからね。よいそうでしたらどうぞ遠慮なく言ってください。
大丈夫ですよ。私、三半規管には自信がありますので。
She gave a confident answer, but the car was shaking so much that she couldn't feel comfortable without a hand on the handle above the window. Tomoe focused her eyes on a distant point in an effort to stave off motion sickness. He lamented not driving her here in her own car.
さて、ともえちゃんはこの後どうします？
Burgers! Lots and lots of burgers! Going into my belly!
そうですね。ホテルのチェックインにはまだ早いですし。
Tomoe glanced at her watch as she said that, while following Ooshi out of the coffee shop. The sun was still high enough in the sky, she didn't need to check the time.
本当は明日行く予定でしたが、このままひなみ沢に行って竜宮家を訪ねてみようと思います。大石さんのお話も気になりますし。
She wanted to see the girl herself, but she was still a minor, so making direct contact at this time would be premature. If she did, there was a chance she'd put Reina Ryuugu on guard, which could impede further information gathering. Instead, she could listen to what her parents had to say and get to know the situation behind her family environment.
そうですか。なら車取ってきますので私もご一緒しますよ。
大丈夫ですよ。私の車、この近くの駐車場に停めていますから。
いやいや、遠慮は無用ですよ、ともえちゃん。女性を助手席に乗せるなんて、後にも先にもめったにないことですからね。
なんかいやらしいな。でも本当にお気遣いは。
No, it's rare for him to be this obscene.
However, when Tomoe tried to decline again, the smile vanished from Ooshi's face, and he turned to look straight at Tomoe-chan. There was no hint of levity in his expression. When Tomoe noticed that, she realized he was no longer joking around.
大石さん、
悪いことは言いません。乗ってきた車で行くのはおやめなさい。Hinamizawaは排他的な村だと先ほどもお話ししましたが、そういえば分かってもらえますかね。
危険なんですか？ひなみ。
いやいや、私がちょっと過敏になっているだけかもしれません。今は渡長氏とは全く関係のない時期ですし、観光とかで足を踏み入れた人もちゃんと無事に帰ってきています。ただそれでも他県ナンバーの車で回るのは村の連中に余計な警戒心を持たせる可能性がある。特にあなたは刑事ですからね。
Ooshi had a valid point. Tomoe was certainly being a little careless. She was simply going to visit Reina Ryuugu. She could get by on her own, but there was still a chance some shadow was lurking behind the scenes. In which case, it was probably best not to drive around in a car from another prefecture.
わかりました。それじゃあご好意に甘えさせていただきます。
Then, Tomoe was able to see various places within Hinamizawa, while Ooshi was at the wheel. Irie Clinic, the only hospital in the area. The households of the Kimiyoshi and Sonozaki families, of the three families. The forestry service building currently being used as the Hinamizawa branch school. And then...
ここに例の竜宮レーナは通っているのですか？
ねえ、そうです。あいにく今日は祝日ですから誰もいませんがね。
From inside the car, she turned her head to look at the school building on the other end of the yard. The heavy construction equipment and woodworking tools casually placed beside it made it look more like a logging facility than a school building.
無理して通えないほどではないんですが、ここから沖宮の学校まで結構距離があります。だから村の連中が子供たちの通学中の安全を考えてここに分校を作らせたんですよ。
へえ。
もっとも当時の理由はむしろ別のことにあった。ここに分校を作って子供たちを通わせることで学校を奪われる彼らのことを刺激的にマスコミに喧伝させ。
It was cunning, but effective. Even in Kakuuchi, when residents built their homes on the planned airport construction site, the people appealed to the mass media, pleading for them not to destroy the source of the children's precious education. The crops they went through painstaking effort to grow would be devastated, and the children were crying. Tomoe had a bitter smile face as she remembered watching the adults act out the farce on TV.
まあとにかくすごかったんですよ。なりふり構わずってのはああいうことを言うんでしょうな。暴力、押しかけ、根回し活動。自分たちの村が失われるか否かの瀬戸際ですから理解もできますが、そしてその団結に親代様信仰が一役買っていたというわけです。
なるほど。
However, when Tomoe listened to Ushi's explanation, something felt out of place. Just like in the coffee shop earlier, Ooshi seemed to have a strong emotional stake in the dam construction project and the curse of Hinamizawa. Almost an obsession. Even when discussing the various incidents so far, he tried to think and analyze them with a certain degree of objectivity and wasn't one to get emotional when it came to investigation. But here...
ちなみに竜宮レーナの学校での様子はどんな感じですか？
それにつきましては、あまり学校側から情報を明らかにしてもらえないので、細かいことは何とも。ただ、おそらく至って普通だと思います。実際に問題を起こした話もありませんし、聞き込みを行った限りでは、下級生たちの印象も悪くないようですからね。
では、大石さんはどうして少し前彼女を調べようと考えたんですか？
例の行方不明になったという北条聡君ですが、いなくなる前に彼女と話をしていたそうでしてね。お社様についての。
お社様の？
Ooshi told Tomoe what he'd heard from another female student. According to her, Reina Ryuugu apparently consulted with Satoshi Hojo a few days before this year's Watanagashi incident occurred.
普段から誰かに後ろからつけられている感じがすると。その子も最初聞いた時は何のことやらさっぱりわからなかったそうですがね。
サトシ君が体験していることは、すべてお社様のたたりの前触れなの。誰かが遠くからじっと伺っている。誰かがずっとつけてくる。誰かがいつも自分のすぐ後ろから見ている。やがて足音は常に自分とずれて一つ余計に聞こえるようになるの。それらは初めのうちはお外でだけだけど、やがて後ろのそれは自分の家の中にまでついてくるようになる。そしてお布団に入って明かりを消してもずっと枕元から見下ろしてるの。ただただ黙ってじーっと自らの罪を認めるまで。サトシ君は夢見が悪いって最初言い出したの。それで私がどんな夢と聞いたら、私の時をなぞるようだった。だから私、彼に予告したの。その気配がやがて近づき、足音を聞かせるようになり、常にサトシ君を見下ろしているようになったなら、それはきっと私の時と同じだから相談してって。
それがお社様だと？
ねえ。それからその北条聡君ですが、家庭の不和の件で相当悩んでいたようでして、彼と妹は叔父夫婦と同居していたのですが、とにかく仲が悪くって、特に彼の妹が懐かなかったようで、毎日のように衝突して大騒ぎになって、その妹を叔父夫婦からかばっていたのですが、それが苦痛になるほど疲れ切っていたとのことです。
その件に対して警察は何も？
動けませんよ。よほど確固たる証拠でもない限りはね。それは公的機関の生活相談所でも同じことです。まして村の裏切り者扱いを受けた北条家の問題。hinamizawaの連中も見て見ぬふりをし続けていました。
3 years ago, Satoshi Hojo's parents went against the village and refused to oppose the Hinamizawa Dam project. They even tried to convince other villagers to support it. As a result, they were branded as traitors who sold out their hometown. Even after Hojo and his wife died in the accident 2 years ago, nobody offered them any sympathy. Not only that, but the villagers continued to treat their children coldly. 2 youngsters who couldn't find any relief for their unfair treatment. So they simply continued to endure it.
ひどい話です。
その件については私たちの力が及ばずお恥ずかしい限りです。その後生き残った叔父はたたりを恐れた沖宮の愛人のところへ転がり込み、残された妹は友人と2人暮らしを始めました。解決には程遠い話ですが、少なくとも地獄のような生活からは脱出したとは言えるのかもしれませんね。
Tomoe looked out the window while enduring the painful conversation. She couldn't simply see it as someone else's problem.
いくら重荷でも兄弟がいなくなって嬉しいわけがない。
Tomoe thought back on her own past. When Monica left and Tomoe was on her own, life certainly did get easier. Her living expenses were cut in half, so she didn't have to work impossibly hard at her part-time job. And the time she spent visiting her at the hospital for rehabilitation could be freely used for her own purposes. But if anyone asked if she was happy, the answer would be no. Her grandmother often went out of town on business trips, so even if she returned home, nobody would be there. She'd turn on the lights, leave the TV on even though she wasn't watching it, and make a meal for one, then eat it in silence. Her excessively serious personality proved disastrous as well. She couldn't call a friend to make small talk, and she couldn't play outside. She had an extremely boring college life of nothing but studying. Back then, she was constantly haunted by thoughts about her sister's current well-being. That loneliness prevented her from distracting herself with anything else.
その妹さんはどうなんだろう。私と同じ気持ちなんだろうか。
Perhaps she wasn't feeling as lonely, since she was living with a close friend. Still, whenever she woke up in the middle of the night, or whenever she came home alone, she immediately remembered. The pain of the absence of people whose presence he always took for granted.
それでですね。ともえちゃん？
ああ、すみません。お社様の話でしたね。それが竜宮レイナとどういう関係が？
竜宮レイナはどうやら両親が離婚することになった家庭問題の原因をお社様のたたりと考えていたようです。実際事件を起こした直前にもその後にもその存在を認めていたような発言がありましたからね。後ろをひたひたペタペタとついてくる。
それって一体何なんでしょうか？
正直私にも分かりません。妄想にしてはできすぎているし、しかも事件を起こした二人が類似のものを感じているとあっては安易に迷信と片付けられるものではないのかもしれませんね。
Tomoe stole a glance at Ooshi, who was looking in a direction they were traveling. His expression implied he wasn't joking around, so she couldn't think of anything to say in response. When she first agreed to Ushi's request to help on an investigation, she didn't think it would be such a difficult story. A girl under some sort of stress exploded one day and violently lashed out. That was the impression she got. And in order to evade her guilty conscience about the crime she committed, she subconsciously passed the responsibility onto something else she knew and convinced herself it was the truth. It was a common phenomenon for adolescent boys and girls, so she thought that Reina Ryuugu was going through something similar. But two people who seemed to have very little contact both described the same abnormal fear of this Orishiro-sama before turning to violent behavior. So there may be more to what they're saying than simply deflecting responsibility. After that, Ooshi passed through the center of the village and headed into a mountainous area. Ah, the dump! Oh, so we're going to pay her base a visit, are we? And the weeds growing along the side of the road as they arrived made it seem like there was no signs of human activity.
ここは？
先ほどお話ししたHinamizawaダム戦争の跡地ですよ。
Look at all these battle scars and rubble, Tomoe. Feast your eyes and marvel to this monument of human cruelty and sin.
者ども
Is
が
that
と
a
しゃれ込む
piano?
には風情のない光景ですがね。
There's a fucking piano in here. Who the hell dumped a piano in this place? It's a piano! Tomoe and Ooshi stepped out of the car and stood in front of the site. It was a mountain of garbage, filled with scrap and bulky trash. It was completely different from the scenic village. A sad place, almost like ruins. And fortunately, we have a piano here to play some sad tunes for this pile of rubble. Apparently, the villagers rarely visited here, so the soil was abundantly filled with weeds. The huge volume of garbage was probably dumped here illegally by people from nearby towns and villages. After the people left things here, they remained here untouched and permanently exposed to the elements.
嫌な風景ですね。誰も社会問題として取り上げないんですか？
まあ余ってる土地は山ほどありますし、お役所も手続きが面倒だからと腰が重いです。声を上げれば、じゃあお前が何とかしろって話にもなりかねませんからね。やぶへびはごめんってやつですよ。もっとも実際にはダム戦争当時の自演をやりすぎて後処理に困って放置なんですから、馬鹿げた話なんですが。
自演ですか？
Ooshi nodded and said yeah in response to Tomoe's question, then lit a cigarette. According to his story, the illegal dumping at this trash heap was connected to the dam opposition movement. Well, then again, Ooshi wouldn't know about her base, would he? And I guess he's just taking her here just to show the place off. Since crooked businessmen were illegally dumping bulky trash and industrial waste at this site outside the village, they established a checkpoint to defend it. In fact, the problem of illegal dumping had apparently been going on for a long time, so they had a strong argument for it. However, it was never about industrial trash. Rather, the main objective was to stop construction-related vehicles for inspection and delay the progress of the construction project.
実際、チクチクと書類を見せろとか、積み荷の数を確かめるとか言って、結構なタイムロスを稼いでいましたからね。現場監督さんはいつも怒っていたものです。親方日の丸のお偉方は、反対運動の住民代表をなだめつつも、一方では、工事の遅れは一日でも取り返せと現場の責任者に言命していましたからね。酒が入るたび浴槽をこぼしていましたよ。
大石さんはその現場監督さんと親しかったのですか？
うん、古くからの友人でした。
And he went stark raving mad.
年上の兄貴のような親父のような厳しいいろいろと教わったものですよ。そう例えるならとちゃんと山沖さん、あるいはちょっと僭越ですが私ととちゃんのような関係って言えばいいのかな。
Just then, Tomoe suddenly remembered. Ooshi told her about the curse of Oishiro-sama murder from 3 years ago, when they were at the coffee shop earlier. That's right. The victim in that case was the on-site manager of the dam construction project, wasn't it?
大石さん、まさかその人って。
ええ、そうです。3年前の渡流しの夜、このゴミ山のどこかで殺されました。
So this is what you wanted to show her.
死体はバラバラにされて、腕が一本まだ発見されていません。
そんな、
Tomoe looked toward Ooshi, utterly at a loss for words. He smoked a cigarette while staring at the mountain of garbage, gazing at the former dam construction site.
毎年毎年、今年こそは犯人を捕まえてやる。そして、もうこれ以上たたりの犠牲者は出さない。そう呆然に誓ってやってきましたがね。結局、今年も出しちまった。そして、働きの毒な男の子の未来まで奪っちまった。そう思うたびに、胸がね。
大石さん。
巴ちゃんは偉いな。こんな気持ちを11年間ずっと持ち続けていたなんて。私はまだ3年なのに犯人への怒りと憎しみで時々自分がどうにかなりそうになる。あなたはその3倍から4倍だ。私だったらきっと耐えられない。自分がその立場に立ってみて改めて尊敬しますよ。
私だって。
Tomoe closed her eyes and bit her lip. If she had to challenge her parents' enemy completely on her own, how would she have managed? Surely by now, she would have given in to despair navigating the labyrinth of the unknown, or continued pursuing it until it broke her. Tomoe was able to keep working hard until today thanks to Ooshi and Yamaoki, and because she had Monica. But Ooshi was shouldering that burden on his own. There was no easy way to say which experience was more painfully difficult. Anger, hatred, and revenge. Constantly thinking those thoughts and enduring the pain and suffering over and over again. I surely said it was everything to me. I've said many times that it's not possible to move on until I overcome this. But sometimes I get anxious. I wonder if the world lying beyond this is really the world I want to see. So I understand. The pain bearing down on Ushi's shoulders and the weight of his sorrow.
大石さん。
はい？
こんなことを大石さんに言える立場じゃないって分かっているんですが、もし私で何かお役に立てることがあったら何でも言ってください。どんなことがあってもできる限りのお力添えはさせていただきます。
巴ちゃん。
Ooshi stomped out his cigarette, then turned to Tomoe with a tranquil expression. His eyes had a brilliant, clear shine to them that exemplified his strong will. Ooshi gazed off somewhere, searching through his memories, then quickly arrived at one. That was the detective from the Metropolitan Police Department, who turned to him over 10 years ago with strong eyes as sharp as a knife. "Let's go, Ooshi-san." Even now, he couldn't forget the fearless smile on his face as he said that. At the time, he certainly felt a sense of justice that he'd nearly forgotten. Then, the sight of him rushing through a storm of bullets without hesitation, gun in hand, in order to protect a comrade, seeing the look in his eyes at the time, moved him to tears for the first time in ages. She sure has grown stronger. Ooshi remembered the first time he met Tomoe. Honestly, at that time, he was worried that she was a delicate girl who couldn't endure the tragedy of losing her family. But look at her now. Her petite, unassuming body was stretched tall and full of vitality, and she even had the compassion to be concerned about him. After 11 years, that image of a frail fledgling was completely gone. Living such a long life. When Ooshi looked at her, he could feel the warmth from the bottom of his heart.
ねえ、助かります。ともえちゃんにそう言ってもらえると、まだまだ頑張ろうって気になりますよ。
また大げさだな。もっとも柿内で大石さんたちにどんなお手伝いができるかまだよくわかりませんが。あれ？
どうしました？
あれ、女の子ですよね。
Oh, wow. Look who's here. Ooshi looked in the direction Tomoe was pointing. The view was partially hidden behind the shadow of the oversized trash. But it was just as Tomoe said. Someone with a girlish figure was looking down into the slope of the garbage mountain, and her hair swayed as she tried to pull something out. I see she's hunting for treasure!
こんなところで一体何をしているんでしょう。
あれはおそらく例の竜宮レイナじゃないでしょうか。
あれが？
After hearing Urushi's answer, Tomoe looked back at the girl once again. She could tell it was a girl from her skirt-like clothing, but she was too far away to get a good look at her appearance.
こんなに遠いのによくわかりましたね。顔を見えるんですか？
いえ、でも間違いないでしょう。こんなところに来る女の子なんて他にはいませんからね。住民や子供たちから聞いた話だと、休みの日や放課後に時々ここでああやってゴミを掘り起こしたりしているそうです。
ゴミを何のために？
さあ、本人は宝探しをしているらしくて、気に入ったものを見つけたときは自宅に持ち帰っているとのことです。趣味とも言えなくもないんですが、一部では気候とも言われていますね。
Eccentric behavior for an eccentric girl. Seems natural to me. Like the sun always rising in the morning.
気候ですか。
It certainly was peculiar. It was unusual for girls of her age to pick up trash, much less take it home. Of course, there could still be usable tools and appliances in there, and it wasn't impossible to find cute things like stuffed animals. However, a common thought among adolescents is an aversion to things they consider unclean. They wouldn't want to touch something dirty. But that wasn't all. It's only a slight exaggeration to say they would declare something unclean and refuse to accept it as their own property because someone else had touched it or used it once.
Touch! Don't touch.
Nevertheless, Reina Ryuugu enjoyed collecting garbage as a hobby, just as the villagers said. What was the meaning behind the act? Does she have some unique sense of value? Or something else? No. Tomoe had a memory of something she read in a book long ago. When people feel a sense of alienation or loneliness, they have a tendency to fill their living space with other people, animals, or things in general. One theory suggested that that behavior originated from the flocking instinct of animals. They say humans are stressed by empty spaces and environments. They're always connected with something, so they can't feel mentally stable unless they feel something close to them. Makes sense. So, even those living isolated from society will become agitated after just a few days if left alone in an empty space with nothing but food. Decorating a room with flowers and pictures, or keeping an animal as a pet, are typical examples of this phenomenon. And when that pressing mental condition is consistently nurtured, they say it can manifest as excessive greed.
A wealthy person extravagantly spends their money like flowing water. This seemingly wasteful act is actually necessary to maintain their mental stability. Well, how about that? A rich person spending their money away like it's going out of style is actually crucial to their mental stability. I learned something interesting today. Additionally, even those without wealth will spend on debt after debt if suddenly given a lump sum, sometimes even leading down the road to ruin. Otabe. However, not wanting to waste things in their living environment, or when surrounded by people they don't like the character of, they can choose to recklessly adopt animals, decorate with excessive quantities of flowers, or in some extreme cases, bring home things abandoned by other people. What if Reina Ryuugu's habit of taking trash home with her was a sign of mental instability? And what if there was some external factor that could have driven her into those circumstances?
大石さん、確かリュウグウレイナの両親は離婚しているって話でしたよね。
ねえ、そうです。その直後あたりに巴ちゃんが調べてくれた学校内の傷害事件を引き起こしました。そして精神科医のカウンセリングを受け、心身に深刻なストレスを抱えているという診断を受けて、心の安定を図るためにこのHinamizawaへ移り住むことになった。前の入院先の看護師がそう教えてくれました。
それなら彼女、この村に来てからはその類の治療をどこで受けているんでしょう。
治療ですか？
ええ、少なくともそれが問題で転校したのだとしたら、簡単に通院をやめることはできないはずです。
It was an offhanded question, but once Tomoe put into words, she started feeling even more suspicious. Even if the prosecution dropped the case against the girl who caused the incident, she would still be obligated to stay in long-term counseling for her mental instability. Additionally, when relocation makes it impossible to continue using the same medical institution, it is common practice for a similar institution in the new area to inherit the medical records and treatment methods of the original institution.
リュウグウレイナはHinamizawaへの移転後、大石さんが聞き込みを行った茨城の病院には通っていないというお話でしたよね。
ええ、その通りです。ですからもし治療を受けるのだとしたら、設備や個人情報の保護を考えると、ゴグラにある大きな大学病院ぐらいしかないと思いますが。
だとしたら、彼女が今どんな状態にあるのか調べることはできないでしょうか。
巴ちゃん、それはどういう意味です？
リュウグウレイナは病気が完治していない。いえ、ある意味で悪化している。それがあの異常行動や大石さんの言っていたお社様の語りに関与している可能性があるのではと。
Tomoe gazed at Reina Ryuugu as she tried to dig something out from the mountain of trash, then turned back toward Ooshi.
北条聡がお社様のたたり、つまり今年の殺人事件に関与していた可能性が高いと、先ほど大石さんのお話にもありました。そして彼女と同じ症状を持つ病気を北条聡も患っていた可能性も考えられる。なぜなら事件前には二人ともお社様に対しての畏怖といった共通認識を持っている。ということは、彼女の精神状態と関与の人間を把握することで、北条聡が殺害行為に踏み切る経緯を理解する手がかりになる。という考え方はどうでしょう。
You are shockingly perceptive about things, aren't you, Tomoe?
では巴ちゃんはリュウグウレイナも今回の殺人事件に関与していると？ちなみに被害者の北条玉江は渡長市の祭りの最中に殺されましたが、リュウグウレイナはその事件当時祭りの会場で複数の人間に目撃されています。アリバイは完璧ですよ。
いえ、その事件とはおそらくリュウグウレイナは無関係でしょう。ただ 彼女が茨城で起こした事件も同様に、大石さんの言う通り、誰かの意志で凶行が引き起こされているのだとしたら、二人の背後には共通する何かがあってもおかしくはない。それが何かが分かれば、ひなみざわ連続開始事件の黒幕の姿が見えてくるのではないでしょうか。
説得力はないこともないですが、随分大胆というか強引な推理ですね。
Ushi's thoughts stirred around Tomoe's suggestion about mental illness and using faith in Ryuugu-sama to control the village. It seems like a completely unrelated story, but if Satoshi Hojo suffered from some mental illness that led to the crime, then there was a chance that the mastermind behind the incident was utilizing that mental illness.
無茶な論法であることは分かっています。ただ二人とも事件を起こす際にお社様が共通のキーワードになっていることがどうしても気になるんです。その背後を洗ってみることで今まで見えなかった何かが見えてくるような、そんな気がします。
It's like Tomoe has some subconscious access to information that the rest of the characters and probably by extension a huge chunk of the audience doesn't know.
なるほど。現状では竜宮レイナについての情報が少なすぎるので簡単には判断しかねます。ただ正直今は八方塞がりの状況です。ともいちゃんのその見方にもちょっと乗ってみましょうかね。
After saying that, Ooshi tossed his cigarette to the ground and stomped it out. Then he glanced at his watch.
それじゃそろそろ引き上げましょうか。余計なところに連れ出してすみませんでしたね。
いえ、参考になりました。この後は当初の予定通り竜宮レイナの父親に会ってみようかと思いますが、よろしいでしょうか。
もちろんご案内させていただきますよ。
Then Ooshi walked toward the parked car while twirling the key around his fingertip. Tomoe tried to follow behind him, but she stumbled a bit on a stone and lost her footing.
おっと。
That moment, Tomoe suddenly looked back at the mountain of garbage and gasped. Off on the edge of her line of sight, there was a girl far enough away to look the size of her little finger, standing there quietly, staring at Tomoe without moving a muscle. She couldn't quite make out the girl's expression. However, she could clearly feel the cold hostility dwelling in her eyes.
お前は誰だ?
She shook her head to dismiss the voice in her imagination. There was no way she could hear a voice from this distance. It was difficult enough to discern her appearance. Tomoe turned and began walking toward the car while those thoughts nagged at her. Nevertheless, she felt it. It felt like a sharp gaze was burning through her back, and it gave her a chill. You know, I just realized something. Tomoe has now set foot within Hinamizawa village itself. So she's at risk of contracting Hinamizawa syndrome herself, isn't she? Doubly so if she consumes anything that's made, any food that's been made here, or water. Oh boy. This could potentially end up in a worse scenario than I initially suspected. Heading back from the garbage mountain, a white building came into view as they approached the center of the village. Ooshi went on to explain that it was the only little hospital in the village.
the Irie Clinic.
おや、あれは
A black car was parked by the front door of the Irie Clinic, and a young man in a white coat was talking to another man dressed in a suit. Then, when the man noticed Ooshi driving the car, he rushed over to the driver's seat.
ああ、大石さん、ちょうどいいところに。
Hello, Kumagai.
ナイスタイミングっす。
クマちゃん、どうしてここに
いや、大石さんがひなみ沢に行くっていうから、てっきり入江診療所に向かったのかなって。警察無線も繋がらなかったから、直接迎えに来たんですよ。
無線がおかしいな。
As soon as he heard that, Ooshi filled the radio beside the steering wheel. Indeed, the light was out, and there was no indication it was receiving transmissions.
あら、本当だ。これは面倒かけちゃいましたね。で、何のご用で
あれ、忘れてましたか？今日って例の懇親会の日じゃないですか。なのに発起人はどこに行ったって所長が大騒ぎしてるんで、大急ぎで呼びに来たんですよ。
発起人って誰ですか？
大石さんですよ。
As soon as he said that, Ooshi stopped to think for a while before shouting, "Oh!" and smacking his forehead. Oh, I see. So this is basically the part where you get the hell out of Dodge and leave me and Tomoe to our own lonesome selves here in this strange little village. Am I right, Ooshi? Am I right? Are you gonna leave us all alone here? And right in the middle of enemy territory?
そうでした、そうでした。ああ、今日月曜だったんですよね。
The worst day of the week, hands down.
てっきり祝日気分
At least for
で
me it is.
日曜日のつもりで行っちゃってましたよ。
まったくもう。で、この方は？
あ、お初にお目にかかります。柿内署の警部で南井と申します。
As Tomoe stepped out of the car, she bowed her head to the man Ooshi called Kuma-chan. Ooshi went to introduce the man as a subordinate of his, Detective Kumagai.
で、どうします、大石さん。今からならまだ間に合いますが。
ですが、ともいちゃんとの約束もありますからね。
あ、でしたら大石さんは行っちゃってください。私一人で行ってきますので。
いやいや、そういうわけにはいきませんよ。竜宮家の場所をご存知なんですか？
Well, even if I don't, well, I am a one-man army, as my former colleagues rather at my place of work would have told you if they were still here to speak of my ability. But I can assure you, I'm a one-man army. If push comes to shove, I can get everything done here all by my lonesome self.
あ、いえ。でもさっき車で来た感じだとこの村って割と見通しのいい区画のようですから、メモ書き程度の地図があれば大丈夫だと思います。
まあ確かに迷うほどの場所ではありませんが。
Ooshi crossed his arms and groaned, still trying to decide.
心配してくれるのは嬉しいけど。
Tomoe bitterly smiled. Apparently, Ooshi still had a strong image of her from the old days and was treating her like a child. She certainly took heed to Ooshi's words in the beginning, paid careful attention to her surroundings, but none of the villagers out and about seemed at all concerned. Well, it'll probably be fine. Well, if it turns out to not be fine, like I said, I'll make it fine. One way or another. Regardless of whether everyone else in this village wants to comply or not. They can either take the carrot, or they can take the stick. Their choice. His defensive posture seemed a little excessive.
もう、大石さんも心配性ですね。
He is a wart.
こう見えても私立派な大人なんですよ。それにここに来るまで特に問題もなかったじゃないですか。
And that's because these villagers can sense my true power. At least I hope for their sake they can. Otherwise, well, like I said, I may have to use the stick on them after all.
まあそうですね。それじゃ申し訳ありませんが、私はここで失礼させていただきます。あ、その車でも大丈夫ですか？
ええ、無線が使えないのはちょっときついですけど。すみません、お手数ですが地図をいただけますでしょうか？
わかりました。ちょっと待ってくださいね。
And then, Ooshi tore a page out of his police notebook and quickly drew a map and handed it to Tomoe. The text was a bit hard to read, but it was easy to understand because he marked every street corner.
ともえちゃん。
はい。
一応用心のために言っておきます。竜宮家の訪問が終わったらまっすぐ沖宮へ戻ってきてください。それだけは約束してもらえませんか？
Absolutely not!
だからオーバーですってば、大石さん。
Ooshi wasn't smiling. Yes, he is. He's just doing it upside down. He stared at Tomoe with a solemn expression as he handed her the key. It felt like he was a little too worried about the situation, but she appreciated his concern, so she nodded.
わかりました。父親に会って話が聞けましたら、まっすぐ帰るようにします。
私も挨拶を済ませたらさっさと沖宮署に戻って待っていますので、もし何かありましたら遠慮なく連絡してください。
はい。それじゃあこの車お借りしますね。
After saying that, Tomoe took the key from Ooshi, climbed into the car, and started the engine. Ooshi watched through the rearview mirror until Tomoe's car disappeared around the corner. Well, here we go. We're finally going to visit the lair of the beast herself. Tomoe drove toward the Ryuugu household, following the notes Ooshi provided her. She found the house with less trouble than expected.
ここか。
Yep, it's the house. She stepped out of the car, closed the door, and suddenly looked over her surroundings. There were no particular signs of other people around. Then she stood in front of the entrance, took a deep breath, and lightly knocked on the door.
ごめんください。竜宮さんはいらっしゃいますか？
However, there was no response from inside. She knocked once more, this time a little louder, but she still couldn't hear anything from inside.
ごめんください。
Still no reply.
留守かな。
Suddenly feeling something out of place near her feet, she dropped her eyes and noticed something like blue paper near the tips of her shoes. When she picked it up, it was a small box of matches.
ブルーマーメイドか。
I remember that name. Tomoe was able to pull the name out of short-term memory after seeing the flashy logo. There certainly was a flashy cabaret club named Blue Mermaid in one particular corner of the downtown area. Naturally, that store was no place for a minor, so it was probably dropped by Reina Ryuugu's father. Yeah, so since this is here, I take it that what's her name is also somewhere close by too?
確か父親は無職だって聞いたけど。
If so, he was in a good position. Tomoe had a prejudice against people who would spend time at bars downtown
without having a regular job. According to earlier investigation, he apparently received considerable compensation from his wife at the time of their divorce. But is there any chance that's the cause of his daughter's problems?
あれ?
Well, it's a huge part of it, I can tell you that much. Tomoe's eyes turned to a strange object in the yard when she softly stepped on it. It was some sort of mascot doll from the store, weathered by the elements. Is it the mascot doll that I'm thinking about? And looking more closely, there were various dolls, stuffed animals, and things resembling machine parts sat down beside it. It looked like they were carelessly sat down, rather than deliberately positioned.
じゃあ一体あの子はゴミ山で何を?
She did speculate earlier that an unstable mental state could be leading her to this active garbage collection, in her remarks about Orishiro-sama. After all, Reina Ryuugu's mental state could be the reason for her unusual actions. And that theory was getting stronger and stronger. That moment, Tomoe suddenly felt something behind her and turned back. She couldn't see anything there. However...
何? 何なの?
She could hear a sound intermittently. And when she realized it was the sound of footsteps, a chill ran through her whole body. Oh, come on. She hasn't even drank the water. Are you telling me she's already got the bug?
サトシ君が体験していることは、すべてお社様のたたりの前触れなの。誰かが遠くからじっと伺っている。誰かがずっとつけてくる。誰かがいつも自分のすぐ後ろから見ている。やがて足音は常に自分とずれて一つ余計に聞こえるようになるの。
Remembering Ushi's earlier story about Reina Ryuugu, Tomoe suddenly turned pale and swallowed her spit. What am I afraid of? Even after hearing that story, isn't it unreasonable to get this nervous? In which case, how do you explain that sound just now? She tried many times to shake it off as just her imagination, but every single time, the footsteps immediately negated that denial, as if to mock her. Even after surveying the surrounding area, nobody was there. There was nothing suspicious at all. What is the meaning of this? Could this be what Reina Ryuugu was referring to? Orishiro-sama's curse? Did she anger the gods by snooping around in a village where she didn't belong?
まさかそんなこと。
Tomoe, I want to remind you, we are the one man army. We can even take on Orishiro-sama if we have to. And win! So have no fear! For even the gods would tremble before my power. Tomoe forced a laugh while struggling to deny the story she heard earlier. Impossible. That's right, it's impossible. Someone or some ghost-like entity was definitely following her. Well, guess what? If push comes to shove, besides being a one-man army, I can also be a pro bono ghostbuster too. So bring it on! Which ghost needs some bustin'? And which part of them do they need bustin' while I'm at it? Even so, Tomoe couldn't cast aside the creepy sensations plaguing her heart.
so she left the Ryuugu household in a hurry. You disappoint me. Again! Then, she opened the door to Ushi's car, jumped inside, and turned the key. However, the engine wouldn't start. It simply continued making idle sounds. Ah, I see! The gods have heard me issue my challenge, and they are making sure that you don't go anywhere, so we can make that challenge actually happen. I am perfectly happy with this development. Finding that suspicious, Tomoe opened the door. And at that point, she suddenly noticed the pungent smell of gasoline. Tomoe stepped out of the car and stood beside it, searching for the source of the odor. It was the gas cap in the back of the car. It was smashed open, and there was a fuel hose for a kerosene stove or something laying on the ground below, covered in gasoline. Oh! That didn't take long for someone to start messing with me, I see. I wonder who did this. That couldn't be the work of a ghost. Well, ghost or no ghost, someone's about to have their nuts busted by me. But did that mean there was a person with malicious intentions nearby? You think someone did this out of the kindness of their hearts? Oh, hey, stranger! I see your car is full of gas. Here, why don't I lighten your load a little bit, just for the hell of it? She fought hard to suppress the urge to panic. Someone must have drained the fuel tank using this hose and spilled it on the ground. Technically, doing so wasn't impossible. Still, she was only away from the car for a few minutes. Not only that, but even though Tomoe went into the Ryuugu family's yard, she wasn't all that far away. Could some suspicious individual have skillfully carried out that act while remaining completely unnoticed? You don't want to underestimate Reina. She blew up a whole goddamn school once, don't you know? In an alternate universe. Tomoe looked left and right, then behind her, searching for signs of another person. Nothing. Nobody was there. Impossible. It couldn't be. Someone was able to break the gas cap, drain the gas from the car, and then disappear in such a brief time frame? Well, I guess the mountain dogs probably also would have the skills to pull something like this off too, come to think of it. But why they would want to mess with... Oh, wait. It's because she's looking into Kohei's death. That would probably be why. Word travels fast among these conspirators, doesn't it? Assuming that's what this is. If not, then it's probably just Reina. That couldn't be the work of humans. Then, was it the work of the gods or something supernatural? Well, if there is one way I can describe Reina, she definitely is super, and she's a natural at it, so... yes? Tomoe violently shook her head, then locked the car and started walking back the way she came. If her memory was correct, there should be a phone booth just a short distance away. If she could make it there and contact Ooshi or someone. Every time she took a step, she could hear the peculiar sound of a footstep just a moment later. It had to be an auditory hallucination. She must just be tired. After hearing so many strange and unsettling stories, her emotions were getting carried away. Tomoe told herself that over and over along the way.
But even so, up until now, she wasn't afraid of ghosts. She didn't even believe they existed. But for the first time in her life, she felt like a fear that froze her entire body. Got dark. She arrived at a fork in the road with a telephone booth right as it got completely dark out.
よかった。間に合って。
Tomoe wiped a sweat from her forehead for sleep as she rushed into the telephone booth. The road had very few streetlights, so if she had arrived just a little later, she might have stumbled on her own feet in the dark. She did bring a flashlight and kept it in the car, just in case. But unfortunately, she forgot to take it with her.
慌てすぎだ。
Tomoe muttered her bitter thoughts as she picked up the receiver. However, it was also true that she didn't want to stay in that place for even a moment longer. Was it less a sense of dread and more of a general agitation and feeling of danger? Or... Tomoe inserted 3 10-yen coins, then opened her police notebook and dialed the number for Okinomiya Station. After a few rings, she heard the voice of an older man saying hello.
すみません。書き写し書の南と申しますが、大石刑事よ。
ああ、ともいちゃんですか？私です。大石ですよ。
I don't have time for your practical jokes right now. I'm dealing with a coward who refuses to exercise my true power in my stead. My avatar keeps rebelling against me.
大石さん、どうして？
いえいえ、あんまり戻りが遅いものですから、心配になって情報センターで連絡をお待ちしていたんですよ。いやー、連絡がついて安心しましたよ。今どちらですか？
あ、はい。Hinamizawa村の電話ボックスの中なんですが。
Tomoe briefly explained the story of the gas being drained from the car. When Ooshi heard that, he responded understood in a low voice that indicated he fully grasped the situation.
すぐに迎えをそちらにやらせます。私も行きますので、10分ほど待っていてもらえますか？
すみません。助かります。では、ここでお待ちしていますので。
あまり歩き回ると危険ですから。それじゃ。
Ooshi hung up the phone after saying that. She let out a heavy sigh of relief as she sat the phone on the book. She already knew that. She wasn't some child afraid of non-existent things in the dark. But the situation had gotten heavy enough that Tomoe wasn't able to walk anymore.
きっと、大石さんたちにはしばらくネタにされちゃうだろうな。
And you deserve it for being such a coward. Instead of standing your ground like I want you to. First, you failed to stand your ground when faced with the mountain of sweets. God fucking damn it, Tomoe. And now you failed to stand your ground when faced with ghosts. Why people heap so much praise on you? I honestly don't know. Feels undeserved at this point, if you ask me. Although, Tomoe didn't have the greatest eyesight in the dark, so walking at night was a bad choice anyway. It was best to avoid getting hurt by tripping and falling into a ditch.
それにしても。
Tomoe couldn't help but grumble to herself. Regrettably, her long time living in the city made her forget how dark and gloomy a country road at night could be. It wasn't so bad in Ibaraki, although she did have to carry a flashlight at night.
軟着になったな。私も。
Once again, she let out a sigh. The telephone pole she could see through the glass was dimly lit, making an irritating sound. There were countless shadows darting around from moths, or some other type of insects. As soon as they approached the round light bulb, they were either blown away by the heat or burned and gently fell to the ground.
飛んで火にいる夏の虫。
She couldn't help but shake her head. As she thought that, Tomoe pushed the door open, trying to get out of the enclosed space and get some fresh air. Hi! Lovely evening, wouldn't you say? And I see you got a little bit of night vision built into your eyeballs in this timeline, Reina. Your eyes seem to be glowing a little. Must make it real easy to get a midnight snack. That moment, Tomoe couldn't help but lightly raise her voice, and immediately jumped back to steel herself. Ahead of her was a girl, expressionlessly staring at her with icy cold eyes.
あなたは
She hadn't gotten a good look at her face. She'd only been able to make out her hairstyle and clothes from far away. However, Tomoe clearly realized that the girl in front of her was Reina Ryuugu.
何か私に用が。
私に何の用？
Tomoe's words were cut off by Reina Ryuugu, striking back at her with the same exact question, and still no expression on her face. The coldness in her tone was as sharp as a knife. The two eyes staring straight at her had a sinister glow amongst the darkness.
ねえ、私に何の用？
A stiff chill coursed through Tomoe's back. Without her even realizing it, the girl had already trapped her within that narrow box. Reina slowly stepped into the box to squeeze her even tighter. And then, she noticed Tomoe's police notebook and stared at Tomoe with all her strength.
刑事か。刑事かお前。そうよ。だったら知ってるの。私のことお前は。
Tomoe felt her neck being tightened as Reina stood right in front of her, staring her down. It happened so suddenly, Tomoe was unable to react. Reina, this is not going to help your legal trouble. This is not going to help your legal troubles, okay? Just putting that out there.
死ね。リュウ君さん。死ね、おバカさん。
The scene before her eyes gradually grew darker. You know, I can't help but wonder, is this actually happening, or is this some kind of hallucination? Her forehead was in pain, and it felt cold and heavy inside her head. She repeatedly opened and closed her mouth, gasping, but not a sound came out. Even breathing was impossible. As hard as she tried to tear the hands away from her neck, they remained tight. In fact, the grip grew even stronger, and the nails even started biting into her throat. She she could hear something. Sound from far away. No. This is someone's voice? What are you? And then Tomoe lost consciousness. Did you save me, Ooshi? If you did, you have my gratitude. I will buy you so much sake that you could positively swim in it. For days, before it all gets absorbed through your skin and into your body.
あれ
When Tomoe opened her eyes, an unfamiliar ceiling came into view. She felt cool indoor air and sensed the faint smell of medicine. And then she felt the sun shining in and heard the crying of the sparrows from outside the window. So Tomoe recognized that it was now early morning.
ここはどこ
She felt a cold sensation on her back as soon as she began to move. It was an ice pack. Feeling a bit more awake, Tomoe rose up from the bed and took a look around. But the dull pain in her head forced a groan out of her.
おや
Hey, it's Mr. Lobotomy advocate himself. How you doing? Are the little leaguers giving you any trouble in the baseball ring? Anyone try to launch a ball at your face? Break your glasses in two? A person on the other side of the curtain seemed to hear that and rose from their chair. Then, a young man in a white coat peeked his face through the gap between the curtains.
やあ、気がつかれましたか。
はい。
安心してください。ここは村の診療所で、私は医者の入江と申します。
どうも。
The young doctor named Irie responded with her greeting with a big smile.
そういえば、診療所に立ち寄った時に見かけたような。
Then she finally turned her eyes toward her clothes. Tomoe was dressed in a hospital gown, rather than the suit she had been wearing earlier.
ああ、心配しないでください。着替えを行ったのはうちの看護師ですから。治療も怪我の消毒と栄養剤を注射しただけですよ。
あ、どうも。
ちょっと待っていてください。今、大石さんを呼んできますので。
After Irie said that, he went behind the curtain and made his way out of the room. She gently raised her left sleeve. There was a bandage on her elbow, and when she lifted it, she saw the mark left by an injection needle, just as Dr. Irie had said. Before long, a flurry of footsteps could be heard approaching, and the door somewhat violently sprung open. Then, Ooshi emerged from the other side of the curtain.
気がつきましたか、ともえちゃん。
I got assaulted by the suspect! I'm doing well.
大石さん。
いやー、よかったよかった。ずっと目を覚まさないから一時はどうなることかと心配しましたよ。
Ooshi had a look of joy on his face as he took a seat in the folding chair by her side. His eyes were bloodshot and a little hazy.
すみません。ご心配をおかけしました。
Were you weeping for me, old timer?
tickles me.
いえいえ、無事でいてくれて何よりです。あなたにもしものことがあったら、私は柿内のまどかちゃんに殺されちゃいますからね。
She doesn't even have a fraction of my power. I'm sure it would take her a long time to kill you. It wouldn't be instant.
そんな大げさな。
Tomoe smiled, but Ushi's mutterings felt completely the opposite. Maka normally had a cynical attitude and would tease her sister, but she was actually more proud and worried about her than anyone else. If something happened to Tomoe and it was his fault, she would never forgive him.
お加減はいかがですか？どこか体に痛みとかはありますか？
頭がちょっと痛いくらいで、特には。
睡眠不足ですね。それと過労も溜まっているようです。
Oh, is that what this is? That whole thing I just dealt with was just simply me being a little too sleep deprived. Me not counting enough sheep at night. Is that what you're saying, old dear old doctor?
ここしばらくあまり十分に寝ておられないんじゃないですか？
Hey, caffeine and cold showers are perfectly fine, adequate substitutes for sleep. Don't judge me. She felt ashamed as soon as he pointed that out. There were so many things to do lately that she had simply been taking short naps in the break room. The last time she'd gotten home was 2 weeks ago. Now it's just to pick up a change of clothes.
いけませんよ、ともえちゃん。お忙しいのはわかりますが、睡眠不足は年頃の女性にとって大敵なんですからね。
わかってますよ。
She started to think it over. Even though she intended to take some time off during the long holiday, why was she here? Tomoe grumbled to herself while letting out a dejected sigh.
とりあえず大事はないんですね、入江先生。
ええ、おそらくは。頭に少しコブはできていますが、転んだ時にぶつけただけのようなので大丈夫でしょう。
転んだ時？
はあ、それはよかった。入江先生、ちょいとともえちゃんと2人で話がしたいんですが、よろし。
ええ、どうぞ。隣の部屋が診察室なので、何かありましたら呼んでください。
Dr. Irie left the room after saying that. Ooshi locked the door, then returned to his chair at Tomoe's bedside and sat down again.
昨日はすみませんでした。
You left me here to die!
え？
Tomoe stared vacantly after Ushi's sudden apology.
ともえちゃんの連絡を受けてから車を飛ばして電話ボックスに駆けつけたら、あなたが中でぐったりと倒れていましたからね。正直まさかと思って酔いどころか肝が冷えましたよ。
すみません。って大石さん、まさか飲酒運転してませんよね？
大丈夫ですよ。
Drinking and driving's against the law.
運転させたのは若手で、そいつにはもともと一滴も飲ませていませんでしたからね。
Oh, I see. I'm glad to know Kumagai was there. So, Ooshi had preparations to pick her up in the event of an emergency. And those preparations indicate how wary he was of the danger in Hinamizawa.
ま、そっちに気が回るようなら、意識もはっきりしているようですね。なら、ちょっと質問をさせてください。ともえちゃん、昨日の晩に何があったんですか？
昨日の晩って。
That moment, the last memory before Tomoe lost consciousness came back to her, and she immediately placed her hand against her neck. It stung, like the skin was burning up.
and when she tightened it, the feeling of suffocation she felt when it was being squeezed back then resurfaced. So she jumped and started to feel nauseous.
そうだ。あの時。
Reina Ryuugu ambushed her and strangled her when she tried to exit the telephone booth. Tomoe desperately resisted, but the tremendous strength was too much to overcome, so the vision in front of her eyes went black, and then she lost consciousness. But why? If that was the case, why was she still alive?
死ね、おバカさん。
Her entire body began to shake as a chill ran through her. Reina Ryuugu was definitely trying to kill Tomoe last night. Her intense hatred and violent murderous intent were plain to see, even in the dark night. I still can't help but question whether that whole confrontation actually happened, though. I mean, yeah, I could definitely see Reina being wary of police figures in general, but to just approach a stranger that she doesn't know outright and try to kill her for unprovoked, I mean, seems really out of character to me. So I can't help but think that there's something else going on here, and I have a suspicion that it might have something to do with the local bug in this area, and how contagious it is. And I can't help but wonder if you might have already caught it, and it's already doing a number on you, mainly because of your pre-existing sleep deprivation. Her fingernails bit into Tomoe's throat hard enough to snap bones, and she was completely merciless.
なら、どうして私を殺すのをやめた？
Did she notice Ooshi coming and run away? No, there's no way they would have overlooked the signs of an attacker. Then did she let Tomoe go because she wasn't worth killing? That too seemed unlikely. Reina Ryuugu was relentlessly attacking at the time, like a wild animal. Then, why on earth did she do it? As much as Tomoe thought it over, she still couldn't find a reason why her life was spared.
どうしました？とめちゃん？
あ、いえ。真っ暗の中にいきなりで、相手の顔を見る暇もありませんでした。
ほう。柔道3段のともえちゃんを気絶させるなんざ、よっぽどの武道の達人ですね。
剣道です。
As she made that offhanded comment, Tomoe suddenly realized something suspicious. Based on their encounter at the Garbage Mountain, Reina Ryuugu didn't look especially strong for someone her age. In fact, even though Reina's school records showed she was fairly capable, Tomoe was even stronger at her age. But despite that, she wasn't able to fight back at all during the attack, which makes me even more suspicious as to whether or not that attack actually happened.
そういえば、あの事件でも。
The violent attack at the Ibaraki school. When Reina Ryuugu was walking down the hallway, swinging a metal bat and smashing windows, they said that it took multiple people, including the PE teacher, to stop her. Thinking about that, it was an outrageous story. Well, then again, adrenaline is one hell of a drug, and it can really strengthen someone up if you let it. So I guess it's not impossible. Could a group of strong adults really struggle to stop a young girl on a rampage?
それで、この後どうします？入江先生の話だと、体力の回復のためにも、一日入院して安静にすべきということなんですが。
いえ、起きます。とても寝ている場合じゃありませんから。
そうですか。わかりました。なら一度、沖宮署に戻りますか。どうしました？
そこにいると着替えられないんですけど。
ああ、私のことは気にしないで。さあ、どうぞどうぞ。
Now, now, you already had an opportunity earlier to be obscene. Don't milk it.
私が気にするんです。
こいつは失礼しました。
After saying that, Ooshi stepped outside the curtain and turned his back. She was ready to pummel Ooshi if he tried to peep at her. Thinking that, Tomoe picked up her blouse and skirt and started to change her clothes on her side of the curtain.
ともえちゃん、
覗いたらぶっ飛ばしますよ。
竜宮レイナが現在不定期に通っている病院の裏が取れました。やはりゴグラにある大学病院だそうです。
え？
Tomoe slipped her arm through this last sleeve on her jacket, then turned toward Ooshi on the other side of the curtain. According to Ooshi, Reina Ryuugu had been witnessed several times at this hospital. Her visits were irregular, so it could have been simply due to seasonal illness, but Tomoe couldn't help but think it over. A housewife who knew the girl just happened to run into her at the hospital and tried calling out to her twice, but even though she clearly noticed the woman, she ignored her as if she didn't know her.
その主婦さんとうまい具合に昨夜の懇親会でお会いして、ちょっとした話題をきっかけに教えていただけました。彼女の話だと竜宮レイナは誰にでも割と愛想のいい子なんですが、その時は感じが違っていたので、よほど体調が悪いのかと心配になったそうですよ。ただあっちでの聞き込み調査は県警本部さんか沖宮とは違う警察署さんの管轄でしてね、私らには手も足も出んのです。まして令状の発行なんてほぼ不可能だから、相当に活動は制限されちゃいますよ。それでも行きますか？
もちろんです。
She answered immediately. Tomoe's fast and courageous judgment was the number one reason Ooshi kept his eyes on her.
さて、ここか。
After stepping in front of the hospital, Tomoe pointed her finger and rang that out. Damn, we're moving fast. This was probably one of the largest scale general hospitals in the Chubu region. It was furnished with the latest equipment and technology, and thanks to that, it was full of talented young staff. However, any patient seeking treatment is required to present a letter of recommendation, so anyone coming here without one is typically referred to a secondary office. But more importantly, they were extremely reliable when it came to patient care and protection of personal information. Even though it was a workday, the waiting room was packed with people waiting for exams.
商売繁盛ね。いい話じゃないけど。
It's not particularly desirable for police and hospitals to be extremely busy. Just then,
あれ？
there was a pharmacy just beyond the hallway of the waiting room. A nurse at the window was looking down at a girl bowing her head, handing over a prescription.
よろしくお願いします。
Oh, that's right. Natsumi has her own medical issues that require her to take some very special medication, doesn't she? Well, fancy running into you here.
はい、わかりました。こちらが呼び出し番号になります。できましたらお呼びしますので、しばらく待合室でお待ちください。あ、はい。
The girl bowed once more after taking the tag with a reference number. Her face looked familiar.
Huh?
And then she stopped in her tracks as soon as she saw Tomoe's face. Tomoe was momentarily at a loss when she saw that expression.
but she began smiling in the friendliest way possible.
こんにちは。また会ったわね。
あ、こんにちは。
The girl timidly ducked her head while greeting Tomoe in her frail voice. She had a very uncomfortable expression, like she was on alert knowing that the police were around.
どこか具合でも悪いの？
いえ、別に。
あ、ごめん。ぶしつけなことを聞いちゃったわね。どうも職業柄、気になったことは何でも口に出すのが癖になって。
Even after responding in that jovial tone, the girl carefully studied Tomoe's complexion, then immediately turned and looked down without saying anything. This was not the place to hold somebody up. With that thought in mind, Tomoe shrugged her shoulders and said, "See you later," and began to turn around. Then,
この前はありがとうございました。助けてもらったのにちゃんとお礼が言えてなくて。
ああ、うん、別に。
Tomoe was feeling lost about how to respond to that sudden expression of gratitude. Besides, Tomoe did hear her say thanks back then. Why on earth did she insist on going beyond that to say it again?
それに私頭の中が混乱してて、なんだか逃げるように帰っちゃって、失礼な感じになってごめんなさい。
失礼なんて私全然思ってないわよ。むしろ当然よ。
怒ってませんか？
なんで怒るのよ。今はまた会えてとっても嬉しいわ。
よかった。
The girl finally flashed a smile while breathing a sigh of relief. Even in being the same gender, Tomoe found her innocent childlike smile endearing.
それにしてもこの病院って人がいっぱいね。結構待たされたんじゃないの？
あ、でも私は早めに来たから割とすぐでした。薬局はちょっと混んでるみたいだけど。
Tomoe followed the girl's gaze and looked at the pharmacy a short distance away. Indeed, there were about 5 people lined up in front of the window, waiting for prescriptions and medical exams.
じゃあ待ってる間退屈しちゃうわね。あ、ちょうどいいところに自販機。ジュースでも飲まない？
あ、いいです。そんな。
いいからいいから。オレンジジュースと炭酸どっちがいい？
あ、オレンジジュース。
As soon as Tomoe heard that, she put a coin in the nearby vending machine and pressed the orange juice button. Then she pressed it again and pulled out 2 bottles.
はい、これでいい？
ありがとうございます。そうだ、お金。
いいって。それとも私の買ったジュースが飲めないってか？
そんなこと。
冗談だって。喫茶店よりは安いんだし遠慮しないで。
はい、ありがとうございます。
Then, Tomoe pulled the tab and slammed down half her drink in one huge gulp. The sweet smell and taste of citrus spread through her mouth, and the cold sensation refreshingly ran down her throat. But at the same time, her stomach started to say, "Give me more."
あ、そういえば診療所から直行で朝食食べてなかったっけ？
In which case, maybe it would have been better to drink milk. Those thoughts nagged at Tomoe while she quickly gulped down the rest.
早いですね。
まあね、これだけは人に負けたことないかも。
Well, you clearly haven't met me.
給食の時は男子とガチでやり合って、もっと女の子らしくしろなんて先生によく怒られたものよ。
あ、いただきます。
The girl relaxed her expression and took a sip with both hands on the can. Her mannerisms were like a cute little animal. Tomoe suddenly watched and smiled.
美味しい。
うん、なかなかいけるよね。初めて見るメーカーだからどうかなって思ったけど、これは当たりね。柿内にも持って帰ろうかな。
刑事さん、柿内の方なんですか？
うん、そうよ。で、あなたも？
はい。半年前に沖宮から引っ越したんです。
The girl went on to explain that she lived in a new residential area not far from Tomoe's apartment.
へえ、偶然。ということは、私は茨城から2ヶ月前に来たばかりだし、あなたが先輩ね。
先輩ってそんな。
おう、私は見ないよ。忘れちゃった？
すみません。
The girl's shoulders slumped as she apologized for forgetting. She's a good kid.
そんなに気にしないで。人の名前なんて一回で覚えられるわけがないんだから。でも私は名字より巴って呼んでくれた方が嬉しいかな。
巴？
うん、柔道の巴投げのってなんか嫌な例えね。色気がないっていうか。
I don't know. I think it sounds sexy. The girl bitterly smiled, then burst out as though she suddenly remembered something. Perhaps that exaggerated demeanor was something she came to associate with Tomoe.
じゃあ、巴さんでいいですか？
うん。あなたのお名前も聞いていい？
はい。私、夏美です。君吉夏美って言います。
へえ、君吉さんでいいのかな？
私も夏美って呼んでください。
うん、わかった。夏美さんね。
はい。
After being referred to by her first name, the girl, Natsumi, lost all the tension on her face and donned a gentle smile.
あれ？君吉って。
That moment, Tomoe got stuck on that last name and started thinking it over. But Natsumi called her name, so she immediately went back to normal.
どうしたの？夏美さん。
柿内ってどうですか？
どうって？
なんていうか、巴さんは引っ越してきて、どんなイメージだったのかなって。
イメージね。駅前が賑やかで、飲食店が多いって感じかな。一人暮らしだからあまり利用しないけど。
私、前がこの沖宮だったから、結構びっくりでした。引っ越す前は都会にちょっと憧れてたんですけど、予想以上だったっていうか。
予想以上？
あんなに、この街とは違うんだなって。
Natsumi's expression clouded over as she said that. Then, she played with the can in her hands while carefully choosing her words.
柿内って買い物もすごく便利だし、人もいっぱいで賑やかですよね。でもなんだか、スピード感が違うっていうか、時々目が回りそうになっちゃいます。最新の流行とかも何がどうすごいのかよく理解できなくて。
今の生活楽しくないの？
いえ、そうじゃないんです。遊ぶところもいっぱいあるし、ショッピングも楽しいし。でも、沖宮とはまるで別世界みたいだから、田舎者の私がうまくやっていけるか、少し不安で。
なるほど。
The conversation started out with good momentum, but Natsumi slowly started confessing her troubles to Tomoe. Even though this was her first real conversation, it was a strange feeling. But maybe they were on similar wavelengths. And above all, they had a strange sense of kinship since they both recently moved to the same town. It's natural to be confused by the differences when moving to a new environment. Even a slight change in lifestyle and dialect can add up to a major sense of incongruity for the person in question. Of course, some people are able to accept those differences quickly, but for those who can't, that sense of incongruity accumulates and unwittingly causes them stress. As a result, they close themselves off to stop those uncomfortable feelings, while continuing to conceal their anxiety.
この子の場合、後者か。
And in most cases, it's difficult for those around them to notice that, because for them, doing so is perfectly natural. As a result, the fatigue of repeated exertion builds up without anyone being aware of it, even the person themselves, and it takes a toll on their mind and body.
それに
Natsumi went on to explain she enrolled in a cram school right after moving to Kakuuchi. Of course, the classwork and lifestyle were completely different from her earlier experience, so it took everything for her just to keep up with the daily course material. During the flow of conversation, Tomoe heard the name of Natsumi's high school. It was a famous school that even she had heard of.
お母さんが勧めてくれたんです。いい大学に合格するためにはちょっと無理をしてもいい高校に入っておいた方がいいって。だけど
確かに趣味で走ってた人間に向かって練習もせずにいきなり全国大会に出ろっていうようなものよね。足が折れるか心臓が破裂するっての。
A change in living environment means a change in study environment. There's nothing unusual about that causing stress. Plus, as someone who saw herself as a country girl, she couldn't pass that responsibility off on others, so she had to inflict it on herself. She didn't have similar hobbies or things to talk about with her neighbors. She couldn't keep up with the classwork, and she felt it was her fault that she was different from everybody else. A child like that doesn't even realize that they're accumulating stress, let alone understand how to vent that stress. In which case, it really should be the responsibility of the surrounding adults to look after her.
すみません、ともえさん。変なこと話しちゃって、私。
気にしないで。その気持ち、すごくわかるから。
え？
実はね、私大学の時に引っ越して、やっぱり今のあなたみたいに悩んだりもしたわ。
そうなんですか？
Natsumi quickly began to look surprised as she heard that. Tomoe tried to make her feel at ease by smiling and telling her an old story of her own.
私ね、高校の頃まで東京に住んでいたの。だけど、家の事情で茨城に引っ越して、生活のリズムが一変しちゃってかなり戸惑った。夏美さんと逆のパターンよね。今から思えばそんなに大した違いじゃないんだけど、話し方とか訛りとかちょっとした違和感の積み重ねが結構重かった。それに東京だと当たり前に手に入るようなものがそこでは買いに行くだけでも一苦労。なんか一人だけ置き去りになった気分になっちゃったな。
置き去りになった。
おまけに祖母がぎっくり腰になったおかげで畑で農作業を手伝うことになってね。いろいろ初めてで最初は失敗ばかりして一緒に働いてた人たちにも呆れられて慣れない間は正直嫌で仕方がなかった。私って割と保守的で適応力が低い性格だったからなおさらそう。いつの間にか毎日元の町に戻ることばかり考えていたわ。
ともえさん。
Not only that, but she lost her parents and her sister went missing. Although she couldn't tell Natsumi that, but the sense of loss and stress at that time was far beyond student life. How many times did she beg for those peaceful days to return?
だけど、ね。
だけど、
初めて自分で作った野菜を食べた時、すごく美味しかったの。東京で買ったことのある野菜と同じなのに、味が違っているように思えた。なんだか、不思議だった。
It may have simply been that way since they were fresh. Or they may have felt difference because she made them with her own hands. I think it's that, more than anything. Despite such a minor difference, Tomoe was surprised by the result.
その時ね、感じたの。違っていることは別に悪いことばかりじゃない。なのに私は周りに合わせなきゃって思いすぎて、気を使いすぎて、勝手に苦手意識を持ってしまっていた。そして、違っていることを毛嫌いして、違いを楽しもうとしなかった。
違いを楽しむ？
ええ。夏美さんは旅行したことってある？あれと同じなの。住んでいた町や村と違う環境を見て楽しむ。それが旅行の醍醐味でしょ？それなのに、引っ越しとなると、不思議なことにそうとは思えなくなってしまう。元は同じなのにね。
だって、旅行は一時的なものですから。引っ越しは、ずっとその場所に居続けるじゃないですか。
After arguing that point, Natsumi suddenly gasped. It seemed even she was surprised by her response.
ごめんなさい。私、つい。
その通りよ。それに、あなたの場合は学校もある。何もかも旅行と同じってわけにはいかないわよね。
However, Tomoe continued.
願望ってね、一つ間違えると義務になっちゃうの。例えば、最初はそうしたいって思っていたはずなのに、いつの間にかそうしなきゃって自分を追い込んでしまう。私は陸上で高跳びをやっていたんだけど、その時も記録を伸ばしたいって思うのと、伸ばさなきゃって思うのは気構えとかプレッシャーとかが全然違うの。もちろんどちらが正しいかは断言できないけど、義務は結構ストレスが溜まってだんだん苦痛に感じてくるのよね。
Natsumi suddenly caught her breath, and her eyes opened wide. Tomoe may have simply uttered a rule of thumb she learned through experience. But for Natsumi, it perfectly encapsulated her personal suffering. Wanting to keep up versus needing to keep up in class. Wanting to get used to city life versus needing to get used to city life. It could be nothing more than wordplay. But even so, indeed, it reached directly into Natsumi's heart. Before long, she started to feel the obligation to fit into the city.
そういう時って、どうしたらいいんでしょうか？
Before she even realized it herself, she stepped forward and asked that. Tomoe was puzzled for a moment by the intensity of her gaze. But somehow she started to feel a sense of kinship to the girl, so she stopped for a moment to think earnestly, carefully choosing her words.
私の経験が参考になるのかはわからないけど、考え方一つよ。慣れなきゃ、合わせなきゃって身構える前に、慣れたい、合わせたいって思うこと。例えば、友達と仲良くならなきゃじゃなく、なりたいってね。
ならなきゃから、なりたいに。
そうそう。ところで、夏美さんは、もう新しい町で友達できた？
はい。でも、テンポが違うからいつも、ついていくのがやっとで。
でも、どう？楽しくない？
いえ。
Natsumi violently shook her head in response to that question. There was no reason to say she wasn't having fun. Walking around town together while shopping and chatting while eating breakfast food were always new and interesting experiences. There was a girl with braids who always raised the mood for over-the-top antics. When Natsumi was sitting alone in class and feeling left out, she called out to her from the other end of the room to look after her. And standing next to her was the straight man in their comedy duo, a kind-hearted girl like a caring older sister. She often lent Natsumi her notes when she couldn't keep up in her studies. And then, a quiet but gentle boy who drew lovely pictures. Thinking about it, she was thankful to have such a happy environment. However, that gratitude turned apologetic. Every time she thought about it, she felt pathetic about how powerless she was. Compared to those kind-hearted friends, she felt dazed, jealous, sometimes even envious. It was getting harder and harder to tell them the truth.
楽しいです。引っ越してきたばかりの私に初日から話しかけてくれたり、いろいろ気を使ってくれたりして。でも私、それがなんだかみんなに悪いかなって。だってみんなは私のためにいろいろと優しくしてくれるのに何もできないから。
夏美さん。
Tomoe could feel she really was a kind-hearted girl. She'd been listening to Natsumi's story this whole time, but Natsumi never said anything bad about her friends or her parents. Surely there was someone she could blame for her guilty feelings.
だけど。
With things as they were, this girl was continuing to build up stress and pain and suffering that could very well explode one day if she reaches her limit. Tomoe had seen many cases of an earnest child falling into delinquency out of desperation, and she was worried about that. So,
ねえ、夏美さん。友達って自分に何をしてくれるかって打算でなるものなの？友達と楽しい話をしたり、遊んだりする。何かで困っていたら手を差し伸べる。その時に見返りを期待することってあるのかしら？
いいえ、そんなことは。
そうよね。そんなこと考えたりしないでしょ？自分がそうしたいからそうしているだけよね。
はい。
だったら別に相手の行為はありがたく受け取っておけばいいんじゃないかしら。それに申し訳ないって遠慮されるより、ありがとうって言って喜んでくれた方がきっと友達も嬉しいと思う。迷惑をかけ合えるのは友達の特権なんだしね。
迷惑をかけることがですか？
Natsumi's eyes went wide when she heard something she had never considered before. They were her friends, so naturally she wanted to do something good for them. But the opposite of that was privilege?
だって知らない人に迷惑をかけるなんて絶対にできないでしょ？ふざけて相手を叩いたり、わざとひどいことを言ってみたり。普通だったら怒られても当然のことが友達にはできる。だってそれは相手のことが大好きだってことの裏返しなんだから。
それ、なんとなくだけど、わかります。でも、友達もそう思ってくれるんでしょうか？
そうよ。でなきゃ友達になろうって思ったりしないわ。むしろ申し訳ないって感じすぎて、無理してでも答えなきゃって気を張り詰めてもいいことなんてない。でないと今度は友達でいなきゃって考えるようになって、あなたも友達も一緒にいることが辛くなっちゃうわよ。
When Tomoe said that, Natsumi suddenly gasped. Is that it? The source of her pain was that she was in a panic, feeling she had to do something for her kind friends. So if she didn't panic, surely it wouldn't be painful.
if she could just get back to her usual pace, interact with them like normal.
でも本当にそれで大丈夫なんでしょうか。普段通りの私でいて、千里ちゃん、たまこちゃん、私の友達の名前なんですが、みんなは仲良くしてくれるでしょうか。
そうね。私は彼女たちがどんな子か知らないから、いい加減なことは言えないけど。だけど、本当のあなたを知らないうちから、その子たちは仲良くしようって来てくれたんでしょ？それって多分、一方的にあなたに、こっちへ来いってことじゃないと思う。その子たちはきっと、あなたが重すぎる荷物を背負っているように見えたんじゃないかな。だから、手伝ってあげようかってつもりで声をかけてくれた。そう思わない？
Natsumi recalled when she first met the two of them. Chisato said, "We're friends, so don't hold back." Tomoko said, "Feel free to speak up if anything is bothering you." But she was the one holding back. She was the one who couldn't speak up. The two of them always left the door open for her.
あなたが言うような優しい子たちなら大丈夫よ。彼女たちと仲良くなりたいって思う気持ち、話せば分かってくれると思うわ。だから、思い切って相談してみたら？これから私も頑張るから、今は手伝ってほしいって。それでもまだ申し訳ないって感じるなら、私もみんなのためにできる限りのことをするからってね。
ともえさん。
It was strange. You know, she had only just met Tomoe. Her words penetrated deep into her heart. Her parents and teachers had probably said similar things in the past. But as far as Natsumi was concerned, they spoke coldly, like they were discussing someone else's business. But strangely, she felt that this woman was different. There was no way to be certain, but for some reason, she believed in her. I'll give it a try. Natsumi swore that in her heart as she lifted her head. Even though she had thought it strange how the weight on her shoulders felt lighter and her heart felt at ease.
ありがとうございます。ともえさん。
え？
私、やってみます。うまくできるかどうかはわからないけど、頑張って友達に話してみます。ちょっと不安だけど、言わなきゃ始まりませんよね。
お世辞じゃないわよ、夏美さん。もし、私があなたの友達だったら、きっとこう言うわ。任せなさい。一緒に頑張ろう。ってね。
As she said that, something seemed to get through to Natsumi, and she responded with a radiant smile. The gloomy atmosphere up until this point had completely vanished. Just then, a voice from behind the pharmacy counter called out, "Number 33, Natsumi Kimiyoshi-san."
取りに行かなきゃ。
じゃあ、私はそろそろ行くわ。ごめんね。好き勝手に喋って時間もらっちゃって。
いえ、そんなことないです。またお話聞いてもらってもいいですか？
ええ、もちろん。だって私たち、友達でしょ？
Natsumi nodded with a pleasant smile on her face.
じゃあ、
何？
すみません。連絡先を聞いてもいいですか？
もちろん。ちょっと待ってね。
Tomoe pulled out a business card and wrote her home phone number on it. Then, Natsumi wrote her phone number down and the two of them exchanged papers.
ああ、でもさすがに警察ですって書けたらギョッとされちゃうわね。なんて言ったらいいかな。
じゃあ、図書館の事務員さんでお願いします。私、本が好きでよく利用していますから。それくらいの嘘は いいですよね。
Tomoe responded, "Sounds good," to Natsumi's suggestion. Then, Natsumi said thank you, once again, and bowed before running off to the pharmacy. After seeing her off with a smile, Tomoe returned and headed toward the main office. Tomoe, I know you don't realize this, but I believe you've just gone and saved both Natsumi herself and everybody associated with her a shit ton of heartache. So, we got ourselves a little tip here, I see. Let's see what this is, and bring this episode to a close. Application denied. April 30th, 1982. Oh, come on, go forward. To the director of the Gogura University Hospital. The application of the manufacturer and sale of the following drugs has been denied. Number 1. Nomenclature. Product title. Placel B. Beta. Selective psychotransmitter reuptake inhibitor. 2. Active effect. Psychotropic and anti-panic/anxiety effect. 3. End result. Causes target to feel better and more motivated. Primarily for the treatment of depression and panic disorders, but in addition to those can be used to treat obsessive compulsive neurosis and eating disorders. By being transported to the brain through the bloodstream, it inhibits the reuptake of psychotransmitters within the signal transduction nerves, and also increases the concentration of transmitters in the synaptic cleft of the brain. As a result, neurotransmission ability is improved, which reduces the user's mental burden and calms their mood. 4. Reason for rejection. In cases of overdose, symptoms such as severe drowsiness, confusion, hallucinations, and in some patients, self-inflicted harm were identified in late clinical trials. Additionally, analysis of the active components is still difficult at the present time. 5. Etc. If submitting another application, analysis of the components mentioned in Item 4 and a description of the active effects will be required. Ministry of Health and Welfare, Pharmaceutical and Medical Safety Bureau. This is Natsumi's medication, isn't it? Do I have to be worried about Natsumi after all? I don't think it's for Kohei. I don't think he was on medication last I checked. Reina, maybe? Well, whoever this is for, I think I might need to be worried for somebody here. Well, way to dampen the pleasant mood that my conversation with Natsumi put me in. Screw you too, I guess. Well, this definitely seems like a good spot to stop, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. And I guess next time we will continue our investigation into Reina and the surrounding village in the next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all next time. Take care.